Hey guys, so I've got part 4 here of the animation tutorial series. I thought I'd do another video in this particular, just because this is a question that I get asked quite a lot. Um, Obviously in the previous videos we've looked at how we can create like bone systems to animate objects, but one of the questions I get asked is, how can you animate different objects that are connected to each other without using bone structures that kind of gives it that organic feel. Um, how do you kind of keep it so that things still stay solid? So you can do this in 3D Studio Max as well. It's a little bit different, and that's what we're going to look at in today's video. Just a heads up, this video is a little bit longer than previous ones. And I'm not going to go into it in masses and masses of amount of detail, because there's actually quite a few different videos out there that kind of go into this in a more advanced way. So feel free to check those out, of course, after you've had a look at this, to kind of give you a bit of an introduction about how it works. So I've just put a wheel in here that I made, and I'm just going to show you some different kind of options here. So if we were to create like a cylinder and place it in the right place to kind of almost act like a, I don't know what the right technical term for it is, but I suppose it would be some kind of spoke sticking out of it, that we're obviously going to connect to some different parts in just a second. I'm just going to change it so the length of my timeline is 100 as well. I'm not sure why it's gone down to 30, but yeah, we'll go with that. And I'll just set it back to default options as well for the curve editor. So if I connect these two things together, I'll just call that wheel as well, sorry. Yeah, call it a spoke. There we go. Probably completely wrong, but at least I know what it is. And then if I just animate this now turning, so one keyframe at the start, one keyframe at the end. I've turned snaps on as well to make sure that it snaps to 5 degrees, so it's nice and easy. As you can see, it slows down as well a little bit at the end, just because it's got that Bezier curve on it. So I'll just open up the track view curve editor that we've looked at in some of the previous tutorials, and if I can just move that down, don't know why that's not moving down, that's annoying. I might have added it to the wrong section. Let me just try and re-add that again. There we go, awesome. So you can see that there's this curve on the green line, which is the symbolizes the Y rotation. So if I select both those points and I just straighten that out by clicking on the straighten out option, and then that just means that there's no fall off at the start or the end, so it's just consistently going at that speed now, which is awesome. Cool. So that's what I want for that bit. So I can just get rid of that now. Just take that out. Move over to my second screen. Okay. So we've got a spinning wheel. Perfect. Now, if we were to attach that to that, and now we play it, this is great. Okay, it moves with it, which is perfect because that's what we wanted to do. So that's a really nice sort of quick way of using 3D Studio Max functionality to attach their objects so that they kind of take on the traits of the object that you're attaching it to. Now, if I was to add this like box shape just here, just going to move it into place, make sure it's aligned correctly, and I'm just going to hide everything else and just focus on this for a second. I just want to line it up, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to affect the pivot, center it, and I just want to make it so that I've moved that position of that to kind of the 0 of the world, just because it's a little bit easier then to adjust the values to make sure I'm in the right place. So if I give that 30, so yeah, that looks about right. I just kind of want it to be on this side and have a central point, so that I can then use that pivot point to align it with this cylinder object just up here. Check all those options. So of course what's going to happen is it's not going to like that because it's been attached already. So in theory I should have done that before I did that, but I can just go to element mode and just go to detach and attach that for a second. And now if I grab my object, my box, sorry, and yeah, just center that. So just make sure the pivot point on the cylinder is centered as well, of course, and then I'll just align those. Cool, and so it's just align those 2 points there. Just makes it a little bit neater for what we're about to do next. Going to reattach that to the wheel, perfect, and then just check, yeah, cool, okay. So that moves around, perfect. Now, if we were to attach the box that we've just created to that, obviously what's going to happen is it's going to spin around like that. And if that's what you want, then that's fine, of course. But we actually want it where we want to be able to move that independently of it, but still be attached to it at the same time. So in order to do that, we use this option here where we link it. It's important to note as well that you should be in the object that you want to link. So you're essentially in the object that you want to become a child of something else. So I'm just going to extend that a little bit. And as you can see, it's still, because it's linked, it's attaching it. Sorry, it's because it's linked, it's still spinning around with it like it would if it was attached to it. But we have some extra functionality now because we can actually move this as well. And of course, if we can move it, that means that in theory we can keyframe it. So, I mean, this is going to be connected in a bit, but for the time being, we're also going to use it as a bit of a guide. As I say, there are some more advanced videos out there that will show you how to do this, like where you can pivot things in a much better way and constrain part of the movement. But I'm just going to do it manually, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So I've just aligned that object to our box as well, which you would have just seen. And what I'm going to do is every 10 keyframes, I'm just going to adjust the position of that so it's roughly where that is there. And what I'm going to do with that actually is I'm just going to extend that out. Notice as well I've turned off auto key. I don't want to auto key the scale of that object moving bigger and smaller. So, but now I've done that, I can turn auto key back on again, and I just want to go through those. So every 10 keyframes, I'm just pivoting that there. So I'm just moving the playhead for the 2 frames and just getting it so that the end of that box lines up roughly with where that line is. And again, you know, there are some more advanced videos out there that will show you how to do this properly in terms of constraining it so you don't have to do it manually, but I'm just sort of doing it quite basically here just to give you an idea of how you would do this. I'm just going to copy that first one as well. Although of course, because it's a complete circle, that means that it would do some weird final spin. So I'm just going to constrain, I'm just going to snap the frame, sorry, just make sure that I rotate that 360 at the end. And there you go, it's mostly okay. There's a bit of a bump there, but we're going to tidy that up in the curve editor again. Make sure I put it in the right place this time. Awesome. And you can see again which ones its impacts on. So it's this one here, and I'm just going to click on these 2 icons down here to make sure it's in view. And what I'll do, instead of going to the straight one, which will do this, make it quite bumpy, I'm going to click on the one next to it, which is set tangents to smooth. And as you can see, that's much better. Not perfect, not absolutely spot on, but not bad considering that we've done it manually. We could, if we wanted to, add a couple of extra keyframes in here, just to adjust that. If you want to kind of try and really refine this. Just see how that looks. I've got a bump there now, so that's not quite worked. So let's see if we can adjust that a little bit. So I'm just going to change the shape of this. I'm going to just give it some okay, so what sometimes happens is when you're kind of scaling these objects, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes when you scale it, it starts to play havoc with the parameters. And so if you just set this back to 100 and then automatically change them over here, it should be more effective. And the reason why that's important is because in animation sequences, what can happen is that those shapes then deform as they play through the keyframes, and you don't want that because obviously that's just going to mess up the aesthetics of what you're doing. So yeah, I suppose the golden rule there is don't use scale on your objects in animation unless you absolutely have to. Instead, use the parameters for it. So I'm just going to make sure that's in the right place. Still not, yeah, 100% happy with that. Just going to delete that, see. Really, I probably want to move that down ever so slightly, if possible. You can do that by doing it manually on here, but you can see it's actually quite difficult to do it from that. So I would resist the temptation to do it directly on the curve editor and just do it in your actual scene if possible. Let's just see how that looks. So it's going up just there, so I just want to move that down a little bit. Okay, still going up. What's wrong? Oh, is that better? It would help if I had auto key on, of course. There we go. And that's quite smooth there. I now feel that that object is probably a bit too high. Just going to move it down slightly. Yeah. Okay. So I'll move that back to type in 100 again, so it's back to its normal scale. Cool. And then, yeah, that's fine. So we're not going to, with this object, we're not going to attach this or link this. We're going to have this on a separate system to show that whilst you obviously can have things linked to each other, sometimes there's no need for that. You can just do it manually like this. So I'm just going to create its own kind of animation system for itself. So I'm just making sure that it's just on the edge. I've also got X-ray turned on, which is just Alt-X on the keyboard, just so I can see inside of it as well. And I'm in the front view as well, just to make this a little bit easier. So, yeah, that looks okay from that point of view. And you know, if you want to, you can make this a little bit more complicated. I mean, I'm not even really sure what I'm creating here, to be honest with you. Some kind of steam system or some kind of like water wheel. I don't know. It's not designed to be some kind of realistic system from a game or anything. I'm just obviously using it to show you how to set this up. But if you wanted to put something on it more complicated because you're practicing or because you actually need to for your project, then I would just show you kind of basically the same principles as before, but in a slightly different way. So if I just create a cylinder on top of this, just line it up. Oh, wait. likey, and then I just like to make it so that everything's got a nice even number, normally multiples of 10 if possible. Just makes it better for modularity as well inside Unreal. Yeah, and then what I will do is I will create another object, so I'll duplicate that one, sorry, and then we'll just have it like where this kind of goes up and down as this moves around. So first of all, I'm going to select that one, and I'm going to link that to that, so that's now become a child of that, and then I want that then to become a child of that. So as you can see, as that moves around, that then links to this, and we can add some extra animation into this. So if we set some keys, we'll do the thing where we set it. So I'll make it come all the way down up until the point that the mechanism starts to move to the right instead. Perfect. And then I'll just give it a while to rise all the way to the top, maybe about there. Actually, maybe a little bit longer. That point, awesome. So I suppose I want it where it kind of comes down quite quickly, but then rises quite slowly. So how does that look? If we play that. That's okay, there's a little bit of a shudder in the middle there, which we might be able to resolve in the track editor. Curve editor rather, sorry. So there we go, that's the one. It's it'll be the Z position, won't it? Yeah, of course it will. It's going up and down. So it's going to be roughly around the end. So that point to that point, I want really for it to be straight, so it comes straight down, and then I suppose that point also wants to be straight coming down. I suppose it's quite good to eyeball it as well in terms of you can see the first line is not steep as the one at the end, so we kind of need to try and make that so that there is symmetry to each other. So I'm going to have to pull that keyframe back a little bit, just so that's a little bit similar. Yeah, they look almost identical now. Cool. And then we get so there's not as much difference, or there's not as much stutter in between, so it transitions nicely between the two. That's me being obviously just a bit OCD with it though. Well, no, maybe not. Maybe it's just me trying to make sure it looks realistic. Yeah, I'll tell myself that. So once we've finished and we're happy, we just export it as an FBX like we have in the previous ones, the previous tutorial, sorry. And we don't need to worry about baking animation or anything like that. Just need to make sure things like smoothing groups are on. And we'll also do the game exporter, which we've not looked at before, but it's essentially in the export options, and you can add the animation clip, give it a name, and at the bottom just give it a prefix name, choose where you want it to save to, make sure that up axis is Z, and that all looks good. Most of the options are fine by default, and click export. So if we import the wheel, obviously make sure skeletal mesh is ticked and everything else that needs to be ticked, so animation tick, that kind of thing. If we test this animation out, this is what it looks like. Okay, I'm not really sure why. I don't really know why it does it that way. But if I import the animation that we exported from the game exporter, it works. It works as it should do. So for some reason, when you export it that way, Unreal is a lot happier with it. I'm pretty sure it's an Unreal thing and not a 3D Studio Max thing in terms of why it doesn't work. Like I'm almost certain that if I exported that and put it into something like Maya or something like that, it would work fine. But for some reason in Unreal, it wants you to put it into the game exporter. So, but we won't complain too much because it seems to be working fine. Cool. Okay. And there you go. I've just added a random material, but there you go. That's how you add kind of different dynamic animations from FreeStreamX. Thanks for watching.